I think I logged enough miles to give you honest thoughts and in my opinion on the brand new 2022 Commencal Meta SX. Now this is a custom build. I did another video where it was more of a bike check, and you can watch that after this if you like. My thoughts on how this bike rides are gonna be different in terms of if you do a comparison to one of the builds that Commencal will eventually sell this year in the third quarter, I believe. I am by no means an expert in the process of fine-tuning and dialing in suspension, but I do know just enough, I think, to get it feeling right for me. I'm primarily just focusing in on low speed compression and low speed rebound. My base settings are basically what Fox recommends for this shock and for the air pressure that I put in according to my weight and the sag that I got on there. Take a lap down a trail here that has a proper mix of flow, a couple of small size drops, a medium-sized drop, a rock garden, and it's just flowy. It's got a proper mix of stuff, right, that should help me, and it is helping me getting it to where the shock feels good for me. How does the bike climb? Given that it's a 29-inch wheel up front and a 27.5 in the rear, that smaller wheel, does it affect the climbing ability of the bike? As you can see, my climbs are not steep, nor are they technical, at least on my local trails. They're pretty flowy, punchy here and there, a little bit of tech in some sections, but overall relatively gradual climbs. And so as I comment on the climbing ability of this bike, keep that in mind, because it's going to vary depending on which trails you take this bike up on. But I guess what I can say is the 78.5 C-tube angle really does put the rider, or at least I feel that it puts me in a very comfortable, easy on the lower back position as I'm climbing up. And the long or longer chainstay out back, in comparison to the AM and the TR, I think it's about 10 millimeters longer. May not seem like a whole lot, but I think it really does help offset the fact that there's a much smaller tire out back than in the front, and so it keeps the bike balanced. The front end does not come up, at least I don't find that it does. And overall, again, other than the weight, because it is aluminum and I do have a coil fork, other than that, I find that it climbs decent, you know. It doesn't climb as effective as my TR, that's for sure, but it's not noticeably worse. It's on par with the AM, I think, in terms of climbing. But ultimately, what's really gonna make the difference is how strong your legs are. So that's about all I can say on how this bike climbs. It'll get you up to the top okay. I'm big on, you know, the proper ergonomics, I guess, so that one isn't hunched over, putting unnecessary stress on the lower back, and I think the geometry of this bike accomplishes that. So what is different between this bike and the AM? Let's begin with the obvious difference, right? It's a mullet, so it runs a 29 up front wheel size and a 27.5 out back. It also does have a flip chip underneath here that allows you to run it in the high or low setting. I am running it in the high setting, which gives me a head tube angle of 64. I think if I drop it to the low setting, it'll slacken it out by like half a degree. The other difference between this bike and the AM, the seat stays here. It does come with a, I'm going to call it a crossbar here to reinforce the seat stays for this, what I would assume, right, because it's got a smaller wheel, and it also has a longer chainstay, which I think it's 10 millimeters longer than the AM. One thing that is also different before I get into how it rides is the bottom bracket height. It's pretty high, so it's not low like the AM, and so I can definitely feel how it is right now in the high setting. I'm actually seated pretty high off the ground, so I don't get that fully planted feel like on the AM, but it's still stable. Let's go. I'd say the AM is a lot more stable on the descents and on the straightaways, and even going through some of the gnarly stuff. I think the AM maintains better composure. It keeps a straight line more so than the SX. Dang, that feels so good. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, because this bike, the SX, it actually feels a little bit more playful, and I know that's a buzzword and it gets tossed around a lot, but it feels a lot more fun. I guess it's not all business, right? The AM to me is it's strictly business. Just plow through everything that you come across on the way down. This one's a little bit more agile, and it does feel a little bit more maneuverable than the AM, and I think it has to do with again, some of those minor but pretty significant geometry changes, as well as the smaller wheel out back. Through the turns and the turns and the windy sections, you know, I can definitely toss around that rear wheel a lot easier. It definitely makes it more how do I say it, more responsive to your input, at least on the back end of it, right? And on the front end of it, it's strictly business. The 64 head tube angle and the 29-inch wheel up front, it definitely does bring in, you know, that confidence to take on the steeps and to take on some of the gnarly stuff and know that it's just gonna roll right over it, plow right through it. Oh my gosh. And save you, right, from some of the mistakes that we often make. Definitely the wrong line. If you've been following my channel, you know that I've gone through quite a few bikes. Last year I rode the Pivot Firebird 29 2019 for most of the year, and then here recently I went through like 3 different bikes, just trying to find the right one. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it here. I think I did find the right one. According to at least Commencal USA, these bikes will not be available until 3rd quarter of this year, but they do have the frames. And if you are local, I highly recommend SpokeX, and that is the local bike shop with a pretty strong online presence as well, that basically helped me put this bike together. That's my custom built 2022 Commencal Meta SX, and I absolutely love it. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. Ride fast, don't die, and God bless.
Nice.
All right, I guess I'll try it. A little nose heavy.